Alright, welcome to chapter 3 and 4. There are a lot of slides and there's a lot of material to cover. I think I said in the syllabus, this class is going to move very fast. We're going to move quick. Like I said, I really want these lectures to be too long. When we get into chapter 4, there's a lot of formulas that we'll be going through, but there's also reference to really how you put those things and solve for them on your spreadsheet, like Excel, that your many cases are in. Chapter 3 really covers payments to providers, and there's a variety. We're going to talk about fee-for-service. We're going to talk about a lot about capitation. Fee-for-service is based on every patient that comes in. It's a per-click basis. Capitation is not tied to utilization. It's more the number of covered lives. That's where you see everybody moving towards due to the Affordable Care Act, and that's what you see ACOs are doing. And as hospitals get into the insurance business, as insurance companies get into our business. So we're going to go through different things and what the financial incentives and risk are associated with those in this chapter. So coding really comes down to the first step in the reimbursement because it tells the payers what you're doing. There are administrative personnel coders on the basis of clinicians' notes code. I can tell you, being in the industry, that finding coders is getting more and more difficult. It's a brilliant career if you've got this type of interest to get into coding. You will always be in demand. There's two different types of codes used by providers, ICD and CPT. ICDs are the International Classification of Diseases. 3, 4, 5 digits. For example, 410 is a heart attack. 410.0, everything past the decimal says where the heart attack was, the anterior wall. ICD codes are used by the hospital, so we're specifying exactly what the inpatient diagnosed. It was just replaced by ICD-10, which greatly increases the number of codes from like 2,000 to 18,000. I mean, it's insane amount. I mean, everybody kind of jokes that, under ICD-10, you may have a heart attack in the anterior wall as a result of panic from a parrot bite, and you can code that. But ICD-10 is very specific. In the United States, we're behind. There's several iterations of ICD codes that the rest of the countries have moved towards, but they don't use it for payment like we do. That is how hospitals get paid. CPT codes, current procedural technology, goes to the specific medical treatment and procedure, really used to show what the physician or clinicians have done. They're 5 digits. So that's what that really focuses on, is CPT really focuses on the physician procedure. Regardless of the payer, there's only a limited number of methods used to reimburse providers. They really fall into two broad categories. Fee-for-service, that can be cost-based, charge-based, or prospective payment-based. In other words, you get paid when you do something. Or capitation. It's tied to the patient population. Say we manage 500,000 lives, we get $100 per member per month to take care of them. I do believe we will have a mini case tied to capitation here. If not, we'll find something. And under cost-based reimbursement, the payer pays allowable cost. The payer dictates and states what the allowable costs are. And you could have periodic interim payments, so with reconciliation at the end of the years. This is pretty much gone. Medicare used this method for hospitals from 1966 through 1983. There is some cost-based reimbursement that still comes through Medicare that impacts your DRGs, but there's a few services out there that are still cost-based, but not acute care hospitals. Charge-based reimbursement is really what everybody's moved towards. You pay bill charges for the services rendered. It's based on a charge master price. So each procedure, each item in the hospital has a charge master number, and that's what ends up, building onto your hospital bill. Historically, all third-party payers paid for services on the basis of charges. Some still do that, and they negotiate a discount from charges. It ranges from 20 to 50%. 20 to 50%, that would be amazing. We end up under our reimbursement blended at our hospitals down here in Jacksonville. We collect about 19 cents on the dollar. So all total, the discount off of charges that we receive based on our contracts is about 81%. So it'd be really nice if someone would pay us 50% of our bill charges. Prospective payment services, those have a fixed amount, so determined beforehand. So this is a payment per procedure, per diagnosis, which is what Medicare changed to, is a DRG. Basically, you get a flat payment based on the diagnosis of the patient, regardless of what you do to or for them, and regardless of how long they stay in your hospital. Or there's a per diem, which they pay you $1,500 per day, regardless of what you do, or a bundled episode across providers. Medicare is moving to that. We've actually got a couple bundled payment programs going on down here in Jacksonville now, where we are accepting risk with our providers and getting a flat payment for a 90-day period for hips and knee replacement. So we're responsible, ourselves and the providers are responsible for their hospitalization and surgery and all post-follow-up care for the next 90 days. And whatever we save off of that target that Medicare has given us, we split with our providers. Capitation, a global payment. It's not really tied to utilization, but really the number of covered lives, and you get paid on a per member per month basis. There's a fixed fee for each member enrolled, and payment may be to a single provider or to a health system that then splits it up. Some accountable care organizations are moving to this. They pay providers a capitated rate that's actually tied to quality of care. So you get $100 per member per month, but if you exhibit these following outcomes, you may get $140 per member per month. Some of the implications of capitation, you actually get a predictable revenue stream. If you're getting $100 or $300 or $400 per member per month, and you've got 500,000 members signed up, you know how your money's going to come in every month. And they're actually made before services are providers. So it's essentially like extending credit to us. It reduces the administrative burden. It actually encourages the providers to put things in place to encourage prevention and wellness. So we're actually out there spending our money on preventative care. And you go from there. Historic utilization is really not a great predictor under capitation. It's what you've got to start with. But as you move more into the prevention and wellness, your cost stream will change, and at some point you should drive down utilization of acute care services or hospital-based services. So, capitation can reduce days in accounts receivable. That is true. You don't really have days in accounts receivable because you're not billing. You're getting a flat check every month for the services, and you don't need to send out bills anymore. There are different incentives to providers. Sorry guys, you just heard my cat jump on the computer. There are different incentives to providers based on the different types of reimbursement. Under cost-based, you really want to maximize the cost and the service quantity. In other words, it makes more sense the more money you spend that is an allowable cost that you'll get reimbursed. Charge-based reimbursement maximizes charges and prices, service and quantity, and you minimize your cost. So you do more, you do more, you do more, you do more. Per procedure payment is you still want to do more, but you want to minimize the cost per procedure. Take, for instance, a DRG. If you're going to get paid $3,000, regardless of how long a person stays, if your costs are $1,000 a day, and if you get them out on after day 3, you break even. You get them out on day 2, you make $1,000. So you're going to do more procedures, but you want the cost per procedure to be less. Per diagnosis payment, again, that's a quantity of profitable cases. You want to do those cases that you make more money on, and it's more. Understand, so many of these things are driving more health care. The way the payments have previously been aligned in this country, you are paid to do more. A per diem basis, You actually want people to stay in the hospital longer and have a lower cost per day. If a person gets out on day 3.5 because they don't cross the midnight threshold, you only get paid for 3 days. If they stay that extra day, you're really not doing much for them. You're kind of taking care of them and, just taking care of their basic needs, but you've gotten all of the expense loaded into the first 2 days. You actually make more margin on the 4th day. I talked about the bundled episode payment. You want to do more and minimize the cost per episode. Capitation flips it. You want to maximize the number of members and minimize the quantity and cost of services you provide. This is the key to actually lowering the cost of health care, and this is where everybody is moving towards now with accountable care organizations. Fee for service, it increases utilization. Fee for service, you saw every model that I talked to, it's about doing more, doing more, doing more. The more you provide, the more profit you make. Capitation actually decreases utilization because decreased volume leads to increased profits. Volume, you make money under fee for service. There's financial risk out there to providers. Cost-based reimbursement, really the risk is minimal. We've got a cost, we're going to get paid for our cost. Critical access hospitals are still cost-based reimbursed under the old method because their volume is so low that they really couldn't survive in the DRG world. So they still get cost-based reimbursement in critical access hospitals. You'll hear them referred to as CAH, C-A-H. Charge-based reimbursements, discounts drive reimbursement below cost. So if you're giving too high of discounts, your reimbursement is below cost. If our costs, the example I gave you in Jacksonville, were 25% of what we collected, we would be upside down. Per procedure payment, cost per procedure will exceed payment. So in other words, if we get $1,000 for an endoscopy, but our cost is $1,200, then we've lost that bet, and we lose $200 per. On a per diagnosis basis, same thing. Cost per admission will exceed payment. If a patient stays 5 days and the expected length of stay that they use to calculate the DRG reimbursement is 3 days, then you're probably going to lose that bet also, and you're going to lose money on it. A per diem payment, again, if we get $1,500 a day, but our cost per day is $1,600, we're losing money. So we've got to get our cost below what that per diem is. The bundled episode, you get paid for 90 days. If your cost per episode of care exceeds your payment. Again, capitation flips it. Cost per member exceeds payment. Here, overall costs are driven by both volume and cost of services. So you would want people to have higher volume in your lower cost services where your preventative care, your primary care, outpatient setting versus in an acute care hospital where it's very expensive. So volume and cost are the risk on capitation. It's very risky, but with great risk come great rewards, right? Different payers use different reimbursement methods, so there's conflicting incentives all along. Prospective payment transfers the cost risk from insurers to providers. Capitation, on the other hand, transfers cost and utilization to the providers. Risk can't be avoided. It's there. You've got to manage it. You've got to manage it knowing your patient population. We're talking about $750 per and 100 admissions. Under capitation, $300,000 in revenue, fixed costs are there, and there is our variable cost. So those both show you even. At break even, you basically have made no profit. At 80 admissions under prospective payment, the revenue is $240,000. We know we've got fixed costs and our variable costs. So under 80 admissions under a prospective payment system, we lose money. Under capitation, that's where the difference is. We get our flat revenue stream of $300,000 to cover our fixed costs. Our variable costs are $60,000, which is 750 times 80, and we actually make a $15,000 profit. 60,000 swing. Why? Because we have revenue that's not tied to utilization, it's tied to the number of lives. What if we have 120 admissions? Well, under a prospective payment system, we do fantastic. Our revenue now drives up, our variable costs go up minimally, and we end up with a net profit. We're under capitation, we lose $15,000 because our revenue didn't go up, but our volume and utilization did. So, capitation is less risky than fee-for-service. You've got a profit range of $30,000 versus $90,000. If the hospital has a high proportion of fixed cost, the fixed revenue stream better matches the fixed cost structure. Think about that. If you've got a high fixed cost, the fact that you've got a steady revenue stream coming in and you know that fixed cost is covered, you're in better shape. Because if your volume drops, you don't have to worry about it. You actually benefit. If you've got a high percentage of fixed cost, you can reduce the measurable financial risk under capitation. Total risk is still high if you don't have actuarial and cost data to set real prices. If we were to come in and say, oh, we can do it by, we think, $80 per member per month, that changes that entire calculation. If we don't have enough members, our revenue drops. And, it's not really easy to reduce volume and change patterns of behavior and change utilization and get your costs. So, if a cost-based payment system, the providers reimburse for healthcare costs after services have been provided, shifting the financial risk to the provider. In a prospective payment system, the reimbursement rates are predetermined before services are delivered. Think of a DRG, shifting the financial risk to the payer. That is true. Cost-based is after, shifting the financial risk to the provider. Under perspective, it shifts the financial risk to the payer. Medicare reimbursement methods. I've talked about DRGs. Here we go. Different methods for different providers. Most use a method of classifying patients into groups, the ICD-9 and CPTs. Patient groups are weighted, so they use different resources. Weights are regularly updated on a regular basis. You can actually go out and read about those with this link that you see to MedPAC. The inpatient prospective payment system is every discharge is assigned to a Medicare severity diagnosis related group, an MSDRG. And that's what we use the ICD-9 coding for. Payment rates are calculated using a base dollar amount and then adjusted for local input prices. So the local wage index, the local supply index, and then multiplied times the relative weight of that Then you've got the outpatient prospective payment system, and ambulatory payment classification is how each discharge is done for that. So for outpatient, you're paid under a different. It's a base dollar amount adjusted for local input and a relative weight for the APC. Physician services are paid under a fee schedule. Each service, each CPT, has a relative value unit assigned that reflects the actual physician work, their expenses, and their liability. And then payment rates are calculated using an RVU value. Again, they adjust it for local pricing and then times a standard dollar amount or the conversion factor. Ambulatory surgery centers, inpatient rehab facilities, all of these are all reimbursed different ways. Inpatient rehab is kind of a DRG, kind of not. Skilled nursing facilities are really based on the amount of therapy you provide, and RUG scores drive your reimbursement up. Home care services, somewhat similar. Again, I talked about critical access hospitals, really are the old cost-based reimbursement. Pay for performance is a term you hear a lot. It's kind of a generic term that says your performance is going to drive what you're actually going to get paid. In other words, you're going to get a certain rate, but you get more if you have better outcomes. Pay performance is a performance measure against specific levels. So we have quality measures, our outcome measures, our process measures, CMS core measures, patient satisfaction. They're going to be non-quality, which is productivity or financial. And then you allocate the rewards, the achievement measurement and type of reward. Achievements based on, what's your relative performance? How did you perform this year versus last year? Are you improving on your outcome? How did you go, or how are you doing at meeting benchmarks? Or how are you doing at meeting what the improvement goals are? We set goals, you attain them, you get a dollar bonus, you get a percentage bonus. They can also be non-financial along those lines. It gives you access to payments if you are access to patients, access to adding more lives to your HMO or PPO or to your Medicare Advantage program. Pay performance systems is large investments in information technology. IT is eating up every dollar in healthcare that we have right now. Trying to get our electronic healthcare records ready, and then also getting a point to get the information to identify pay performance, identify opportunities, and actually change it. Medicare is working real hard, and CMS is working real hard to try and find out what is the right incentive. For right now, I will tell you that hospitals will pay a penalty if a patient if they have a higher readmission rate on patients readmitted to the hospital within 30 days. Currently, that penalty spread across the entire year and spread across all your reimbursement is less than what you get if you have readmissions. You get paid more for the readmission than the penalty is. So if you were truly doing a financial analysis, you would say, I don't worry about the penalty. The problem is it's going to turn. So if you don't reach a point, and they're going to keep cranking up that penalty until they find that break-even point. So you better learn now, and you better do what's right for your patients. It's not right that they're readmitted. So if you focus on what's right, you'll eventually come out ahead. All right. Which of the following measures are typically not used? We talked about we used outcomes. What's your process? What are your structural issues, and what are your productivity? Provider satisfaction usually isn't used. You'll see patient satisfaction. The satisfaction of the physicians in the hospitals, that's not going to drive pay performance. Health reform, and all we're going through now, we have value-based purchasing. There's bundled payments with shared savings, and there's quality-based compensation that's going on, where if a higher percentage of your eligible women get Medicare or get mammograms this year, you've actually done something preventative, and you get a quality bonus. There's other payments to providers that are out there, disproportionate share hospitals, DISH. That's going away. That's some of the dollars as those decline to pay for the cost of health reform. Hospitals get an extra kicker on their DRG if they provide graduate medical education. Again, readmission payments as they're going down, and then you also have penalties for hospital-acquired conditions, encouraging hospitals to do what's right and lower their infection rates and lower that risk to patients. All right, our 3 key learning points in Chapter 3. You've got reimbursement methods, risk sharing, and pay performance have a huge impact on the risk and behavior of providers because each of them have different incentives. You use coding and reimbursement methods that are always complex and constantly changing. The PPACA, the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act, changes provider payment methods to emphasize value and outcomes instead of volume. Everything is moving to the outpatient setting, and everything is moving to taking full risk under capitation, where you're actually wanting to promote wellness and prevention. All right, a little extension on Chapter 3. I just wanted to kind of put this in there. Conflicts can arise between providers and institutions. If you've got independent physicians in a risk-sharing pool with a hospital, different people have different incentives, so you set risk-sharing arrangements. Different providers have different incentives again, so you're trying to create incentives to act in the sense system instead of just their self-interest. so that you'll have a withhold fund where 10 to 20% of the reimbursement is withheld into a pool, and then based on any year-end surpluses from those risk pools, they're then paid out. It can be based on financial or non-financial. Usually they're typically based on quality of care and patient satisfaction. All right, Chapter 4, Time Value Analysis. This is going to get very complicated. It's actually simple algebra when you get down to it, but there are set formulas that are out there that your spreadsheets will do for you, but we'll do a little time exploring what the formulas actually are and walk through the equation and solving the equations. This is going to go fast, and this is going to be one that you're going to need the book to go through this and read it, because you really don't want me to lecture for an hour and a half on just Chapter 4. So let's talk about time value analysis and what that means. The financial value of any asset is based on our future cash flows, and you have to assign appropriate value to the cash flow at different points in time. That's a time value analysis. Of all the analysis techniques that we're going to discuss in this class, none are more important than time value analysis, because this talks about how your cash flow is, what your money is worth to you, what your return on your investments are. Time value analysis is necessary because money has time value. A dollar in hand today is worth more than a dollar in the future. Why? That dollar today is earning interest over time, and the value of future dollars have to be adjusted in order to compare it to current dollars. So a time value analysis is also called a discounted cash flow, and it constitutes the techniques used to account for the time value of money. Each tick mark designates an end of a period. Time 0 is the starting point, the beginning of period 1. Time 1 is the end of period 1, beginning of period 2, and so on and so on and so on out through period 3. So if you follow that timeline, and your cash flow at 0, cash flow at 1, cash flow at 2, cash flow at 3, and your interest rate. So, what is the future value after 3 years of a $100 lump sum invested at 10%? So we've got future values which move to the right along it. So it's compounding. And for now, to make it easy, let's assume interest is paid annually. So we've got $100. We're trying to find out what the future value is of that $100 compounded annually at 10%. So after year 1, the future value is the present value plus the interest in year 1. So present value plus present value times interest. So the present value times 10%, 1.1, $110. So we've got 10% interest in the first year. Here's where you understand the value of compounding. If it just went up by 10% every year, and it was just, you made $10 every year, that's not right. Now your balance is 110. So you've got your future value after 2 years is your future value 1 plus the interest in year 2. So let's solve the algebra to see what that is, because we know what future value 1 is, and you know the formula up here. So the future value 1 plus the future value of 1 times interest. So you get the future value times 1 plus interest. So your present value times 1 plus interest times 1 plus interest. So it's compounding. Here's where it's compounding. So when you solve that, you see you've got these two. Well, that's squared. It's 2. So your future value is your present value times 1 plus interest squared, because it's in year 2. We're compounding it. So 100 times 1.10, 1 plus the interest rate, squared, because it's the second year, is 121,000. The value of compounding is you gain an extra dollar. So after 3 years, what's the equation? Let's just go right to the matter. The future value is the future value of 2 plus the interest in 3. So the present value is 1 plus the interest cubed, because now we're in year 3. Again, it's simple algebra. You just got to remember the formulas, but a lot of your spreadsheets will do these for you. So it's the $100 times 1.1 cubed, 133.1. So in general, here is the formula. The future value, n is the number of years, equals the present value times 1 plus the interest rate to the power of the number of years. So this n is going to be the same. If we compound over 4 years, the future value in 4 years is equal to the present value times 1 plus the interest rate to the power of 4. There are 3 primary methods to find future values. You solve using a regular calculator, which is kind of what we just did. Use a financial calculator. A lot of the financial calculators have future value, or what we're going to spend time on, and you're going to spend a lot of time on this semester, is you use a computer with a spreadsheet program such as Microsoft Excel. When I had finance class, we didn't have this. We had Lotus 123, and that was actually brand new and cutting edge. But we have evolved. So, all right. So if you have a regular calculator solution, we've already kind of figured that out, right? It's $100 times 1.1 cubed, which is 133.1. We did that already, that exercise. We're going to have a lot of spreadsheet solutions in this part of the presentation. I'm not going to go through them in as much detail as this. They all kind of go through, here's if you do it in algebra, here's if you do it with variables, here's if you actually use the function in the spreadsheet. So, what is the present value of $100 due in 3 years if the interest is 10%? If I know I have to give you $100 in 3 years and I earn 10% interest on my money, what do I need to have in pocket or invested so I'm going to be able to pay you that $100? So you do discounting. 3 years from now it's $100. Let's discount what it is worth today to get to $100 in 3 years. You move left along the timeline. So if we solve, the future value equals present value times 1 plus interest times to the power of years of service for present value. Let's do a little algebraic equation here, and if we want to find out what the present value is using this formula, then we actually divide, right? You divide this side by this, and you divide this side, so now we've isolated our present value. Again, everybody said, how am I going to use algebra when I grow up? I use algebra every day. So, but it's simple algebra. So now we've isolated the present value. So the present value equals future value with years divided by 1 plus interest compounded by years, or to the power of years. So if we've got the example we talked about, you've got your present value is $100. Your interest rate is 10% in 3 years. What do you have to have in pocket today to have $100 in 3 years? $75.13. So, if I were to offer you $75.13 today, or $100 3 years from now, which would you prefer? Financially, they're exactly the same. However, cash in hand today is a good thing. So, personally, I'd prefer the cash in hand today. Financially, they're exactly the same. I'll take the cash in hand today. I'll take the risk that maybe the interest rate's going to go up. So, how do you do it in a spreadsheet? Same issue. You can see the algebra, but there actually is a present value formula. So you've got the present value formula formatted again, interest rate, number of years, future value. Similar format, similar formula as it is. Again, you can work through Excel and it will help you the different formulaic things that you put into the spreadsheet. Remember these. We're going to be doing these in the many cases. All right, solving for interest. Here we go, algebra again. Assume a bank offers an account that will pay $200 after 5 years on each $75 invested. What is the implied interest rate? If an investment earns 20% per year, how long will it take the investment to double? There you go. The number of periods in per. You've got a 20% interest rate, present value of $1, future value of 2. How long is it going to take for it to double? The number of periods are 3.8. At 20% interest, it will take 3.8 years to double. But again, the formulas are there. It's amazing what Excel has done to change business computation, business calculations, and made so much of it so easy and is such a time saver. All right, which statement is correct? I'm not going to read all of these to you, but I'll go right to letter C. If the discount or interest rate is positive, the future value of an expected series of payments will always exceed the present value of the same series. Okay? Because you've got interest and it's compounding. So if the discount rate is positive, the future value will always exceed the present value of the same series. Annuities. You have 3-year ordinary annuities and a 3-year annuity due. So you see a payment in the ordinary. Payment comes at the end of period 1, end of period 2, end of period 3, and a 3-year annuity due. You make the first payment in year 0, second payment in year 1, third payment in year 2. Year 3, you're done. So the 3-year annuity due, a portion of it is due immediately. So what is the future value of a 3-year ordinary annuity, so it's not going to be due until after the first period, of $100 invested at 10%? So the first period is 10%. Second period, how do we calculate that? Again, on a spreadsheet. Number of periods, payment, and rate. The payment is $100, 10%. So our actual future value is $331. Present value, if it was a regular annuity versus an annuity due, is $258. So this is actually worth more. Why? You get your cash faster. So your cash comes to you faster and it comes over time. All right, a return on investment. The financial performance of an investment is measured by its return on investment. ROI, ROI, ROI. Every piece of capital you buy, everything that you do in healthcare, you need to know what your return on investment. So what are they? Are they either in dollar terms or rate of return? So let's assume a hospital is evaluating a new MRI. The project's expected cash flows are given on the slide. So if the first year it's a $1.5 million, because we have to come out of pocket, and then by year 2 we have 310, 410, actually 310,000, 400,000, 500,000, 750. Do you know where these numbers come from? The 1.5 million is the investment to purchase and install the MRI. In the first year, we're going to make a profit of 310,000. Year 2, we're going to make 400,000 as volume goes up. Year 3, 500,000. By year 4, we're making $750,000 on the device. That's where the numbers come from. So, if you've got a simple dollar return, you've got $460,000 as a simple dollar return. In other words, you take the $1,500 invested, add all the profits, and say, okay, we're going to make $460. Is that a good measure? Maybe not. Let's talk about the discounted cash flow, the return with an 8% interest. So you've actually got a net present value of 78. when you start calculating the discounted cash flow the way we did with that interest rate. So how do you figure that out? If the interest rate is 8% and we've got $1.5 million invested, these are the profits we make over the year 4, the cash flow. We make 310 cash flow, 400 cash flow, 500,000, 750,000 cash flow. We can figure out what the net present value is. Again, the beauty of Excel, it's got it all set there for us. So, what's the opportunity cost rate? If you got a dollar return on the net present value, you need to apply a discount rate. Where does that come from? The discount rate is called the opportunity cost rate. It's the rate that should be earned on an alternative investment of similar risk. In other words, if I just took that $1.5 million and put it in the bank, could I make better interest on it than actually going out and buying a piece of equipment? Now, what is my return on just investing that for 5 years versus what am I return on buying the piece of equipment and producing cash flow with it? This concept will be done over and over and over as you're trying to make decisions on where you spend your money. Do we save our money? Do we spend our money? Or what do we spend our money on? What is the best investment? If I only had $1.5 million to spend this year on capital, do I get a better return on an MRI? Or do I get a better return on a new operating room? If I can do that by 1.5 million. So I'd have to look at the cash flow of the two and look at what the opportunity cost rate is on it and be able to say which is better for me versus just hanging on to my $1.5 million and putting it away in a bank. So you assess the riskiness of the cash flow. You identify alternative investments, in other words, securities, put it in a bank, or your alternative could be an operating room versus an MRI. And you estimate the expected rate of return on a similar risk investment. The present value provides a return equal to the opportunity cost rate. In most time value situations, benchmark opportunity rates are known. So, if you calculate the net present value, the discounting process recognizes the opportunity cost of value. Thus, a positive net present value means the investment is expected to create value for the investor, and a negative means the investor is expected to lose value. So you want a positive net present value. It actually says that it's going to be better and it exceeds the opportunity cost of capital. So you've got a rate of return on that same MRI as you work your way through to get to zero of the net present value. So the earned rate is 10%. So we're guessing the interest rate is going to be 8% over the course of these 5 years or 4 years. We're showing that we're actually going to get a 10% internal rate of return on our device. So the opportunity cost is 10% versus 8%. So that's the opportunity cost of capital. So far we've talked about annual compounding, but there's other compounding that occurs intra-year. You could be, if it's done within a year and you're compounding more often, the interest is earned on interest during the year. In other words, more frequently. This is what happens to you with credit cards that are compounded monthly versus annually. And that's why your annual interest rate is very high, because it keeps compounding and it compounds more frequently. So interest is earned on interest during the year. The future value is larger under annual compounding, and the present value is smaller than under annual compounding. So the future value is larger than under annual as it really ramps up, and that interest starts accruing interest, and it just builds on itself. So if we've got an annual and we've got 3 periods where we're compounding 10% interest, we know the formula. 100 times 1.1 cubed gives us 133.1. We beat that problem over the head, I think, already in this lecture. But say we actually take that same 3 years and we compound semi-annually, And so it's 10% annual, but every 6 months we do 5% interest. So the future value with 6 periods at 5% interest is actually worth 134.01. Very simple formula, but in life, this is what happens on your credit cards when they're compounded more frequently than annually, and your interest rate starts gathering interest. In this simple little comparison, it's another dollar on how we work through it. So, the earned annual rate at various compounding. If you only compound one time, annual compounding, 10% is 10%. If we're doing it quarterly, so 4 times a year, we take the interest rate divided by 4, which is how many periods we're going to do in a year, and we get 10.38. Starts going up fast. If we do it monthly, divide that interest rate by 12 to the power of 12, 10.47. We're almost a full half point of interest higher when we do it monthly. If it's daily, you start doing the math here, now it's 10.5. So the more frequent the compounding, the greater the future value, because interest is being earned on interest. Again, you can put this right into the spreadsheet, and you've got the cost of capital, the compounding periods, and you can calculate the effect. 10.38, 10.47, 10.52. Again, spend a lot of time out there looking at the different formulas and what Excel can do for you, so you're not having to do the algebra. All right, which of the following bank accounts has the lowest effective annual rate? 8% with monthly, 7% with monthly, 8% annual, 7% with daily, or 8% with daily? 7% monthly. Of course, the 8s are going to be higher, but 7% with daily compounding is actually going to bring you a higher effective annual rate. So there's your answer. All right, review of different rate types. You've got a nominal rate, rate stated in contracts. You've got a periodic rate, the stated rate number divided by the number of compounded years, and an effective annual rate. That's the rate that under annual compounding would produce the same results at a given stated rate, with compounding more frequently than annual. In other words, what is the effective rate? It's a 10% rate, but we're going to compound it twice a year. The effective rate is 10.25. We did that math earlier. All right, if the number of compounded periods per year are annual, then the periodic rate is equal to the stated rate is equal to the earned. We're only compounding one time. If the number of compounding times per year is greater than 1, what happens? The periodic rate is less than the stated rate is less than the earned interest rate. The effective annual interest rate is actually greater than the periodic rate because we're compounding multiple times. So 10% periodic rate semi-annually. The periodic rate is 5%. The effective annual rate is 10.25. The stated rate is 10. So there you see it. The periodic rate is 10. The stated rate is 10. But the EAR is 10.25 because we're compounding our interest. An amortization schedule. So we're going to walk through how you construct an amortization schedule for $1,000, 10% annual loan rate with 3 equal payments. Did at the beginning of the lecture, and you can go back to that, or you can learn how to do it on a spreadsheet too. Interest rate, number of periods, present value. What is the payment? When you put your interest rate, your present value, and your interest rate, it calculates what your payments per period should be. We calculated 302. Now the balance is 697. If you repeat these steps for years 2 and 3, you'll actually complete the amortization table. So your beginning balance is 1,000 in year 1. You've made a payment of 402. The interest rate that we calculated is 100. Your ending balance is 698. So now your beginning balance in year 2 is 698. You're making that same $402 payment, but now your interest has gone down. We calculated off the 698 instead of 1,000. So 10% of 698 compounded annually, $70 rounded up. Your principal's 332. Now you've got a balance at the end of that period of 366. 366. You make your payment of 402. That included a $36 of interest, 10%. Got it? 366. Your balance is zero. Your total payments are $206. You paid $206 in interest on the $1,000. Interest declines because the outstanding balance declines if you have level payments. The lender earns 10% on the outstanding loan. So the outstanding loan balance is falling and your principal goes up. This is how your car is done. This is how your house is done. So if a $50,000 loan is to be amortized over 7 years with annual end-of-the-year payments, which of these statements is correct? Right here, down to C. The proportion of each payment that is interest as opposed to repayment of principal will be lower if the interest rates were lower. Three key learning points. Compounding is the process of calculating the future value, and discounting is the process of calculating the present value of a lump sum, annuity, or uneven cash flow. The financial attractiveness of an investment is a return on investment. Different compounding periods are used for different investments, and compounding periods affect the actual rate that you're paying. All right, we got through all those, and that whole slide's in about 50 minutes. I'm available by email, by text. That phone that I gave you is also my cell phone, so you can text me on it. Feel free to reach out. If you've got questions and want to do it during office hours, send it to me in advance what your question is so we can set it down. Or some of you had already been emailing back and forth with me, and I can guide you through your homework. I'm not going to give you the answers, but I can look at your spreadsheets, tell you what I think you can do to work on it, and kind of give you a hint and guide you and advise you. Welcome to week 2. We'll get through this week, and then we'll take the week off for Thanksgiving. Thank you very much.